You are listening to the Next Play podcast, the playbook for high-performing leaders who want to exceed their full potential. From walking on the Ole Miss Football Team at 5'7", 150 pounds and earning a full D1 scholarship, to coaching thousands around the world and working with massive organizations like IBM. I've learned countless lessons that I'll be sharing right here with you. Join me as I interview some of the most successful people so you too can learn how to focus on always moving forward by deciding, planning, and executing on the next play relentlessly. This is Richie Contartesi with the Next Play podcast, and today I have a very special guest, someone I've known for quite some time, and someone I played football with at Ole Miss. What's up, Bryan? How you doing, man?
Toddy.
Bryan Powers. Listen, this guy's had a hell of a career post-football in the world of sales. He's worked for some really prestigious companies like Yelp and LinkedIn and Oracle, and has had a lot of success. He's been in sales role himself. He's been in sales leadership roles and sales facilitator / training roles. And he's really worked his way up and holds a really good position right now at a young age. So someone has a lot of knowledge in the tech industry, in the SaaS world, but sales is sales, and a lot of the methods come across the board. So Bryan's going to share a lot of cool things around sales training, sales facilitation, so you can increase your sales and your commission. So Bryan, thanks so much for being on the show.
Yeah, appreciate it, Richie. I was excited when I got the phone call, and before we got on, we were just talking, and it's crazy to think like we've known each other for 15 years, and it seems like time has flown by during that. So it's kind of cool to look at our career paths. So this is pretty neat.
Yeah, I think we hung out like in San Francisco. I had an event like 4 or 5 years ago. It's so fast how fast, or so time has flown by so fast. But let's get into you, man. Let's I like to kind of get into the nuts and bolts of things. Quick, Bryan coached football after our careers for a little bit, and sales and sports are one and the same. Competition, being able to overcome adversity, constant failure without certainty, which is very similar to sales. So how do you feel like you've been able to translate a lot of the things that you learned in sports and in your sales career, from sales rep to leadership and beyond?
Yeah, that's a great point. I remember one of my very first sales jobs, actually really just starting off in sales, and I was struggling. People around me were doing better. They were closing deals, setting up meetings, and I'm trying to figure out, why are these people succeeding when I'm not succeeding? Yeah. And fortunately, my manager at the time was a former college athlete. He played football at San Diego State. And he sat me down, we had a conversation, and he said, in sports, you when you're struggling, you work out harder, you lift more. All these things are on you and you focus. He goes, in sales, he goes, you need to leverage the people around you. And in sports, sometimes we don't want to leverage the people around us because we're competing against them. Yeah. We're going up for the same position. We're going up for playing time. But in sales, my quota is different than yours. My book of business is different than yours. When you're doing something well, I want to learn and leverage from that. And if people are doing something that I'm not, I need to put my ego aside and really sit down and listen phone calls, see what they're doing. And once I got that in my mind, that's when I think my career started to get better. Once I started to learn and leverage the people around me rather than trying to do it on my own and go into this little bubble like sometimes athletes we do.
Yeah. So basically you were, listening to, how they were handling their sales calls and their objections and stuff like that, and then kind of mimicking a lot of the things that you learned there.
Yeah. And then putting your spin on it, right? Because how many times have you heard a joke and you try to repeat it and it makes no sense? If you try to do the same thing in sales, try to use the same stories, the same analogies, it doesn't come off as natural. So seeing and understanding, hearing what the objections are and the responses, or understanding the process or the prospecting, but doing what works for you and what works under your certain circumstances, then it becomes your little spin on what you're doing. And that's when you really own it and it becomes you.
Right. No, totally. I think tonality is something that's so misunderstood. And a lot of people like, I guess I want your spin on this. Like a lot of people try to teach tonality, but I believe tonality is just a byproduct of conviction, which is one of the most important things. Like, how do you teach, or how have you seen it? Like, how have you seen people take on tonality and actually have success with that?
So when you see people, when the tone starts to go up and down, part of that is one, they're not prepared. And I hate saying that, but when you're not prepared, you start to talk faster. You try to overcomplicate. You try to go deeper in depth, trying to prove that you know the knowledge rather than just giving that concise answer. So we teach a lot is, hey, the more you can understand what's important to the customer, the more you can understand what's specific to that line of business or the product that you're selling, you start sounding pretty good and your tone tends not to go up and down. It's when you get caught off guard because sometimes you're not prepared. That's when all of a sudden the high pitches or the low voice, or you feel like you're stuttering your way through. So regardless if you're a sales rep who's just starting, maybe you're a BDC or you're a field rep with 30 years experience, it doesn't matter to the customer. It's all of a sudden, if you can give them what they need and you can show that value, that's when you can really start feeling good. But the tonality, the more you know, hey, we'll go Ole Miss here. Knowledge gives you confidence. Confidence allows you to play fast. The more you can know, the more you can come off as credible.
Right. No, that makes a lot of sense. Do you feel like, how do you teach that? Like, how do you, is it more about just them like role playing and practicing, or like, how do you get someone to get to that place?
I think it's a little bit of both. It's about understanding your resources and where to go to, but role playing plays a big part of it, especially for younger reps when they're not used to getting objections or they're not used to digging on those second, third level layer questions and really going deeper to understanding what some of those meanings are. And that does come with practice. But I
Right.
think the more you can give the customer what their motivation is, the easier that conversation is going to be. You're not trying to think of questions to ask. You're just going back and forth and having that natural conversation.
Yeah. What do you think today are some of like the most important skill sets for us? Let's say sales leaders, and then we'll move to sales reps. Like, what do you feel like today are just some of the most important? I know that's kind of maybe a tough question, but I want to get to like the good stuff with you because
Yeah.
you've got such good experience and worked with so many, reps and leaders to this point. Like,
Yeah. It's funny. I think the biggest thing is reps and leaders being on the same page about what's happening. Because a lot of times, if we think of the sales cycle, there's creating the conversation, starting the opportunity. And then once that opportunity becomes real and we think that there's a chance that this is going to close, then all of a sudden leadership hops in. So leadership's getting involved naturally when they think that there's an opportunity that this may go towards their number, their quota. But I think having that conversation from the very beginning and looking and being involved with the sales reps from the start of it and understanding what steps are needed to win. We talk about that a lot. What's needed to win? Who is needed to help you win? So whether that is your internal team, your external team, the resources that you need, those all play a part in it. Because at the end of the day, sales leaders, they have a number. They're trying to hit that number because that was given to them by their VPs, that was given to them by their C levels. So the better that we can know what's happening and the better that we can talk to it, the better then we can forecast. And the better we can forecast and the more accurate we can be, the easier that sales cycle is going to be.
yeah,
It's called a cycle because it goes in a circle, right? At the
yeah,
end of every fiscal year, it starts all over again. Or when a deal closes, now all of a sudden that cycle begins all over. We need to make sure as something leaves, something's coming back in. And the
yeah,
easier that process is, the communication from start to finish, it creates everything flowing up and flowing down a lot smoother.
yeah. So yeah, exactly. I mean, we see that a lot. Like a lot of leaders do a good job of focusing on the results or the back of the funnel, but not the top of the funnel. And like you mentioned, one of the things we always talk about is it's it's mastering the activities it takes to get someone through the top and the middle of the funnel, and understanding how to improve those that lead to the result if you become a master at those, right? So
Yep.
So how have you seen, like, how have you been able to teach that, or how have you been able to help managers do that? Do you have like a
Well,
system or a process, or
I think I like the funnel analogy. And when we think of the funnel, it's that top part is the foundation. I always say
it's
that's the
like,
foundation.
right,
Yeah, you have to have that foundation in the very beginning, because where do we spend the majority of our time actually? On the top part of that funnel.
right,
So the more we can be engaged with that, the better we can get in those early adopted areas. Because let's be real, I mean, at the end of the sales, we're good. That's the fun part. We know how to close deals, but it's getting our way to it and through it and understanding what are the challenges in that middle part before maybe a decision maker comes on, or before an executive sponsor is brought on, to where we don't have those hiccups, or all of a sudden we don't have those objections at the very end, because it's happened to everybody in sales. Everything's going good, and then all of a sudden at the very end, some little hiccup comes up that causes the deal to get pushed, causes the deal to get ruined, or they go with a competitor. So that's not, that doesn't come out of the blue. Something happened on the way down that we didn't catch or we didn't see. So the sooner we can see that, it does come from experience, but the sooner we can get ahead of it. And now all of a sudden, it's not objections on product at the very end. Now we're talking pricing, and that's a whole different game in itself.
yeah. When you say pricing, what do you mean? Like just how to handle pricing?
Yeah, negotiations. Negotiations is its own little beast, but at the very end of the day, when you're just negotiating on price, you've done a
Right.
really good job on the product above.
Yeah.
So
Okay. So so as far as leadership goes, like, how do you feel? Like, man, what was the last time we were on the phone? We were talking. You gave me kind of like a system. I think it was called growth.
yeah, grow model.
Grow. How does that? Because I think that's really powerful. I think a lot of people can get value from that. What
Yeah,
is
and
that for, and how does it work?
it's coaching reinforcement. So the grow model, the thing I love about it, it's been around since the 80s. You can Google it, look it up. This is a way for coaching reinforcement. And it's accountability, right? A lot of the stuff that you talk about, I think that's why
Yeah.
we hit it off so good when we had that conversation. It's about understanding what is the goal that people are trying to achieve, or what was the goal of the phone call you just listened into, the email that you just sent, the call you were just on, and were we able to actually accomplish that? But we're not giving the answer. See, as leadership, this is where a lot of leadership struggles. We want to give the answer. Hey, great
Right.
call, fix this. All right, good job. I'll see you later. Hey, you should have done this rather than that. Well, at the end of the day, those reps continue to make that same mistake over and over again. So how do we fix that? How do we eliminate that constant coaching and reinforcement on the same thing over and over? Role model is, what was the goal you were trying to achieve? Were we able to achieve it? Yes or no? What's the reality? That's where the R comes in. Was it good? Was it bad? Did we get to where we wanted to be? Now the options, this is where you get the rep or the individual to actually get them to tell you what they are going to do in order to make the changes and improve. All of a sudden, I'm not, as a leadership, telling them what they need to do. They're telling me. But the biggest part to grow is that last part, the W. It's the will. It's actually setting standards and timeframes behind when this is going to get done. Because once again, you got it, boss. I'm going to get this done. We'll do it. Awesome. Thanks for sharing. What are the chances that's going to get accomplished? Now, all of a sudden, the will is putting it with a time frame, the steps, what they're going to do, how it's going to be put in place. And that's when the reinforcement starts coming in. That's when it actually puts some responsibility behind the rep in order to get that done. But at the same time, the leadership they didn't tell them it. They
Right.
told them what they're going to do, and they're going to hold themselves accountable.
What percentage, dude, of sales leaders do you think do this stuff? So I'll give you some examples really quick. So we have a system, we call it the WIN system.
Mm-hmm.
It's exactly the same thing. It's what do you want? W is what you want, the goal. I is what's the issue? Why didn't you get there? So we only have this conversation if they didn't. So you said, I think reality that, it's okay, what's the outcome? But win, what do they want? What's the issue? Why didn't you get there? And then the N is what's your next play? and they have to answer that. And it consists of three things. What are you going to do? How are you going to do it? When are you going to do it by? So it's a very similar kind of model there, but we role. So if I go do like a presentation or a keynote, I always bring people up, whether we're teaching that model, we're teaching our next play system, which, is all fact-based or KPI-based or evidence-based, coaching based on the KPI, their numbers, their activities, and we'll role play it and we'll bring sales leaders up and they've never seen anything like it. They've never done anything like it. Like, how have you found the most effective way to teach this type of leadership model?
Yeah, I think role playing is a huge part of it, because you'll see them, all right, hey, what's the goal? Awesome. Were we able to achieve it? Yes or no? And then all of a sudden the option comes in, and naturally that's where the manager, the leadership wants to come in, start telling and asking. And that's when you really need to pull and ask a lot of good, like, directional type questions to get the rep or the person to start opening up, get them thinking what really happened, get them to dissect it. And that's where a lot of the time the trouble comes into play. Or they get them there, and now all of a sudden the next play or the will, it's open-ended. There's nothing to hold them accountable. And then it's like, all right, great, well, I'll talk to you next time. Well, if I'm a VP or if I'm a sales manager, how much time do we really individually get to spend with people? There's not a lot. So taking that time and setting the next steps and following up, now it's putting that responsibility on the person to practice that skill, to make the changes, to work on their pitch, their email, or whatever it is. And the manager then needs to follow up. It's just as important on their side as it is the reps.
Yeah. What do you do in scenarios? So what do you do in scenarios when you have sales reps that aren't coachable? Like, if they're not coachable or they don't want accountability, like, usually when we do an event, like, we'll have every person in the stands be like, by the end, they're like, I want coaching and I want accountability. And most people do, dude. Most people want accountability if it's done the right way. They want coaching and accountability if it's done the right way.
Yep.
But, when there's not like a good, clear system, or it's not motivating in some way, the word accountability can be very, for seasoned reps, can be very not exciting.
Well, when you think of accountability, probably those people that don't want it or maybe don't buy into probably associate accountability with micromanaging.
Yeah.
So now all of a sudden they may have had a bad experience in the past, and especially somebody's season, I got this, I get it, I understand it. But it's the same thing when I've taught classes before in the past, when it's less about me telling and getting more about the person explaining and telling me what they're going to do and what's happening, and all of a sudden you start seeing a little bit more of the buy-in, because nobody wants managers just do this, do that, do this, do that. But naturally, as managers, we're there because we want to help. We've had success and we want to push and succeed. We all have numbers we want to hit. There's motivation behind each side of us. But at the end of the day, if we're just telling, that rep doesn't feel bought in. That rep doesn't feel like they're contributing anything or that they're listening. That's the other part too, that the manager's not paying attention. But I think when you can combine what their wants and needs and what they're trying to achieve and help them by coaching to get to what their motivation is, now all of a sudden the accountability comes into play because you're doing it together.
Yeah. What if you have reps that aren't open and they're not like interested in telling you what they're motivated in, and they're just like, hey, leave me alone. I just want to go and sell and do my own thing.
That's a tough part too. And I think it's understanding the different, DISC profile is something that's very common within corporate companies, understanding personality traits and having the conversation based off of those traits. If somebody has a very dominant personality and they don't want to be, maybe as open, or they're more vocal on what they want to do, how do we have conversations with those specific personality traits? And I say traits because I don't like labeling people, somebody's a high D, highly dominant. It's just a trait that they have in that moment. But how do we handle that conversation next to somebody who's very compliant, who follows the rules, who doesn't want to make mistakes? You coach them differently. So I think understanding that specific DISC profile and trying to understand what their motivation is changes it up. But sometimes it happens. People just don't want to, have that coaching and that responsibility. And at the end of the day, as a manager, you need to spend your time where you're going to be able to hit your number. And who are the people that are going to accomplish that?
What are you?
I would say I'm a mix between a C and an S, so compliant and steady.
Yeah,
Even
I
though
would
I
say
like
that.
to talk, I also follow the rules. I'm an ask for permission before ask for forgiveness type person, and
Yeah.
that's how where I fall.
Where do you feel like, what do you feel like the sales reps that are succeeding today post COVID are doing right? Because selling, I mean, I believe selling today is so different than it was. Not just the virtual thing, but the way people are responding to marketing and sales
Mhm.
is just different now. What are your thoughts on that?
To me, that's a great point. I think pre-COVID, it was very relationship based. People were flying all over the country, all over the world, having conversations, taking people out to dinner, leveraging their connections. And now we're seeing a big cutback on that, maybe not as often. So now they have to figure out different ways to build those relationships, to find those motivations. And to me, I'm a big believer in thinking outside of the box. How are you going to separate yourself from the other people, maybe even at your company, that are reaching out to that same account, or the different businesses that you're battling against? What's going to make you stand out from all of those other people? And I think before you could have leveraged the fact of, oh, I'll go in person, I'll meet them, I'll send my emails, I'll send my LinkedIn. Everybody LinkedIn's, everybody emails, everybody cold calls. So what's going to make you different? And I think the people that think outside the box, that utilize different forms of social media, I'm a big believer in Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat. All of these companies have those. All of these companies post content information for you to find. I think now than ever, you have to know what motivates the person you're speaking to. So what's important to who, but also being creative to get in front of them to show different ways that you can help, because it's different than the way it was. And the people who think outside the box are the ones that can really get your foot in the door.
Do you think sales reps should be, like you said, like, so one way to get in front of your ideal client without banging the phone on them is to post content? Do you think sales reps should be posting their own content and having their own kind of unique mechanisms um of, being different than any other sales rep from their competitors?
Absolutely. I'm going to pull a Gary V right here. So Gary V he wrote a book called Jab, 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 Right Hook.
Very
And the
familiar,
whole
yeah.
point of jab, 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 right hook is give, 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 ask.
Yeah.
All right. As a sales rep, we are always asking. We're asking for meetings, we're asking for appointments, we're asking for next calls, we're asking for deals. So is every other sales rep you're competing against. The point of give is give relevant content, give information, send info, so that when that person says, hey, Bryan, you know what? Call me back in 6 months. What changes between now and 6 months if you don't provide them with anything? It's going to be the same cycle over and over again. So reach out to them once a week, once every 2 weeks. Send them articles that you see relevant based off of their needs, what's important to their role, maybe goals that the company is trying to achieve and that you can help them achieve in that path. The better we can understand what's important to who, and then we can show them the value. I'm not a big fan of what's it called, the trusted advisor. I don't like that term, because how am I a trusted advisor if I've never talked to you or given you or worked with you? I need to prove my worth, and by giving you that information,
Yeah,
by
it's
posting the
cheesy.
content, by posting the content, even if it's on LinkedIn. How many times do you see an article that's posted, that's reshared, that's followed, that you can reference to somebody? All of a sudden, now you're being seen when you're not supposed to be thought about. And that's where all of a sudden you go in for that call 6 months later. Oh, yeah, I've seen the articles you sent me. I've seen your post, top
Dude,
of mind.
right. Dude,
Yeah, it plays a
we
big
get
part of it.
we get mad inquiries from, like, so it's so funny. Like, I get a lot of traction on TikTok and Instagram and Facebook, and I get crap on LinkedIn. Very low in maybe 5, 6 engagements on a post or something like
Mhm.
that. but it's because of my target market on LinkedIn. They don't engage, but they lurk, dude. They're because we get a lot of inquiries, and they're like, "I've been watching your or I've been watching your LinkedIn posts," and then they inquire, but they don't engage. And so, for anyone listening right now, if you're not getting engagement on LinkedIn, but you're connected with your buyers and they're an executive level, like VP or above, they're lurking on your stuff. Like they're watching. They might not be engaging, but they're watching.
So think of it this way. Imagine if somebody did engage with you. What would that be? How would that affect you all of a sudden in that engagement?
What do you mean? How would it affect
So
me?
like, so here's the thing. If you're saying, hey, look, I post all this stuff and no one engages, no one writes in the
Well, they
comments
inquire. They go to inquire on the website.
on the website. Imagine if somebody said, hey, Richie, I really like this article. You're going to see it. You're going to
Right.
see that comment. You're going to see that engagement. Now, all of a sudden, that person is top of mind. So it's the
Right.
same thing in our
Yeah.
prospect. You can go look at the Fortune 500 companies. Look at the Lyfts of the world. Look at the Ubers. Look at the I don't want to say Twitter because Musk posts all the time, but people post these articles about what's happening in their company, what they're doing in the future, things that are very important to them. And go look in the comment section. You know, somebody that has 150, 200,000 followers maybe only has 20 or 30 people that actually wrote something in that comment. And most of those aren't even relevant. Hey, I love Lyft. Great, good job. But imagine if you put something in there striking up a conversation.
Right.
You're
Right.
trying to reach out
You
to
don't
that
need a
person.
following to do that.
You don't need a following. You just comment right in. Now all of a sudden, that person is seeing you. That person's seeing that comment. And now you're creating some type of bond, and you might not even be asking for anything now, but 6 months down the road, when you need to have that conversation, you need to leverage, you need to ask for something, that right hook, you now have some backing behind it.
Right. But okay, so then it comes to the conversation of activities by priority. If you're a sales rep, you can't just be on LinkedIn commenting and all day, right? Well, first, before we get into that, hold on a second.
Yeah.
So, are companies backing sales reps so for example, I spend money. I have an editor, I have a team that takes my content, cuts it up, creates reels, posts them. Like it's not cheap. Sales reps, I mean, the ones that are doing well can afford to do that, but what if you're even if you're a 100K or a 200K sales rep, like probably not going to be budgeting content teams.
No.
So how do they do, like how would you do that as a sales rep today? Like what are the sales reps doing that are to, you know what I mean, to stay relevant to
Yeah, and I think part of it too is let's go back to the lurking, right? Maybe necessarily you don't have to be posting all the time, but you are following the people that are posting that content. You're seeing things that are being out there, quarterly reports, acquisitions, maybe a CEO or a VP posts something out on their LinkedIn that they think, hey, great quarter, here's some stuff that's happening. That's information that you can then pull on conversations with them, or reasons to reach out, reasons to engage. You're right. I mean, you're not going to be able to post all the time across all certain forms of media. But the fact is that just by putting your name out there and your brand out there, you make it consistent. They don't need to post videos, but they could post articles about things that are happening in their
but
industry.
do you think that companies need to start to move to investing in their sales reps and content?
Oh, for sure. Well, I can tell you some companies do it a lot better than others. I mean,
Yeah.
I know companies that have whole departments just behind specific social media content that's relevant that they can post out.
Yeah, but the
And then
companies, it's like the companies are posting this content. It's got to be personalized coming from each individual sales rep.
it needs to have a little bit of both, right? Because if all of a sudden, if you're just posting company, now all of a sudden you get tuned out. But there needs to be a little bit of balance about your professional life, your personal life, your work
Right.
life, and how all of those blend together. So I
Yeah.
think, there's some formula out there where you could do that, but I think being consistent, and you know this with social media, being consistent with your posting about what's relevant, about different ways that you can help, different events and things that you can go with. And part of it is just trying to, if you're not doing it, there are other people that are doing it. And that's part of the game right now. As much as we'd love to just make phone calls and send emails, you have to do what other people are unwilling to do in order to get ahead. And a lot of people just stick to the phone calls and the emails, but there's other ways to get in front of potential buyers.
You can post videos online and get 2, 3, 4, 500 views, 1,000 views. That's a lot. I mean, that's not like, I'm saying, if you're a sales rep, you can go on TikTok right now with no followers and post like a pretty good video that might take you maybe an hour or two, but you release some really good content that would help your target audience. You can get 1,500 views, 2,000 views, 3,000 views, like that.
And I think the tough part is when people initially start, this is a total gym theory, right? If I go to the gym for a week, I'm not going to see a lot of results. If I go to the gym for 6 months, I'm going to start seeing a lot more results. With social media, if we don't see that instant gratification, I have a lot of people will tell me, well, I didn't see anything, so I stopped. And I'm like, well, how many posts did you do? How many emails did you send? What was the content? Oh, I only did a couple of them. I only did what? That's it. You know, tell me. We have a saying, don't tell me something doesn't work after 2 tries. Tell me something doesn't work after 200 tries.
Right. And even that's probably not enough on social.
Probably not enough. Yeah, exactly.
You don't post. I never see you post. I know you're inside now. You're more in leadership and all that.
Yep.
But
well, you know what's funny is my customer.
You're a lurker, aren't you?
My customer is different than your customer. My customer is the people at the company that I'm working for. So my content's going to be more geared around how can I help you be better at sales rather than, hey, I need to close the deal and get in front of people. So your content's going to change too, depending on your demographic, who you're reaching out to, your different lines of businesses. Where I'm there, I like, I comment, I engage. That's where I spend a lot of my time.
For sure.
Yep.
So what's the post-COVID, what would you say is like the best way to increase your sales today? I know it's kind of a broad question, but I want to leave it kind of open-ended just to see where you go with that.
Yep. I'm going to say, I read an article a few days ago that said 82% of C-level executives say sales reps are unprepared when they get on calls. So 82% of people who make decisions say that sales reps are not prepared. So
when you say prepared, like what does that mean?
They get on the call and they ask questions. Oh, what's your plan for this fiscal year? What are you looking to achieve? As a sales rep, you need to tell them what keeps them up at night, not ask them what keeps them up at night, especially in this market we're in right now. You need to go there with research and understanding what's important to who. What's the company goals? How are they going to achieve them? How is that person going to help that overarching goal? What plan do they have in place? You need to come in more prepared than ever to be able to move these conversations because there's more competition than ever. You know, this isn't one company.
Why is that? Why is it all of a sudden there's more competition today than ever?
There's money. There's money in the market. People see opportunities. A lot of companies do multiple things now also. You know, you look at Amazon. Amazon started off with what? Selling books. Now they have a cloud service. So now you're competing against different brands and different organizations. So if you don't come off as credible, if you don't know what the customer is dealing with, you can't help them with their pains and their challenges. They got a lot of other people calling that can potentially get those deals for you.
Yeah, it makes sense.
To me, it's knowing the motivation of the person you're speaking with. What's their motivation? Their motivation could be, I want to retire in 5 years. I want to be able to actually make it to my kids' games on time.
Yeah, but do you you can't open the conversation with that kind of question though, right? Like
not to that extent, not that extent, but you can definitely open the conversation with, hey, look, I read an article and this is what I see. How are you achieving that? You know, if they say, yes, we are, great. How are you doing? If they say no, what's your plan? You know, if you read an article that CTOs are still hesitant to move to the cloud, I'm going to call some CTOs and understand why are they hesitant to move to the cloud? Have you made that decision? Like why or not?
Like to an extent. I'm not trying to sell you. I'm just curious, kind of thing.
That's a good way of putting it. Yeah. But at the same time, rather than saying what's your plan for FY23, you're saying, hey, look, I'm reading. How many times have we heard that? Oh, what are you looking to do? What's your infrastructure? You know, I'd rather come and have information and be wrong and let the customer tell me, because you know they will. If we're somewhat maybe off a little bit, they're going to tell me what they're doing, than to ask them and try to pull. And then we get in these situations where all of a sudden we're asking yes, no questions. We're getting stuck. We're getting not sure where to pivot. They're maybe not opening up and explaining as much as we would have hoped. I'd rather come in with things that I'm seeing in the market, or I'm seeing with that role or that industry and the trends that are happening, and do that little bit of extra research than to come in and just hope. Once again, hope's not a strategy. Hope that they're going to give it to me by asking a very generic question.
Right. Yeah, it's interesting. Preparation, I think, is really important. And I'm also just thinking, like, for people that, is there anything that you do before the call? So that's something like on our end, like we're really big on, before our salespeople ever get on a call, we send them, a little bit of homework, right? Is that something that you're a fan of, that you teach? What are your, just because like you got to be prepared, but I say this to my salespeople all the time. I say, if you get on a phone call and someone asks you the questions, what do you do? Reschedule the call.
Yeah.
You're never going to win that call, dude. Like, well, in our industry, it's not going to, you're just going to, you know what I mean? So how do you handle that?
So one of the things we talk about pre-call preparation, we'll say, okay, hey, where do you go to learn about the customer before we get on the call? And people will, in chat or in a live session, they'll talk about all the internal tools we have, or maybe some of the, LinkedIn, Google. Very rarely does anyone ever say the company website. It's kind of funny, right? As simple as it is, but if I'm getting ready to call a customer, I need to understand how they make money. I need to understand what they're doing, what's happening. You want to talk about the age of COVID, how many companies have had to readjust their strategy, and we're seeing that now because now we're on the backside of COVID. Things have changed from 3 years ago to 2 years ago to now. So go to the company website. I know. But you go to the company website, see how they make money, see what's happening. A lot of them will have those 10K reports, investor reports. You're going to find the hierarchy and understand. At minimum, you need to go on that website and understand, because you're right. How many times have people, do you even know what we do? Do you know what we sell? And if you get caught right there in that question and you can't answer,
I'd hang up the phone.
You're done. You're done.
I'd hang up
Good
the
luck
phone,
ever trying to get there again. So pre-call, I mean, understand what they do, understand how they make money, understand what motivations to the person you're reaching out to. Are the conversation you have with a VP is going to be a completely different conversation than you have with the end user. And if you try to keep it generic, you're going to get lost. It's going to become a very generic conversation. Yeah. So to me, understand the person and what they're dealing with.
What's your favorite thing to teach today?
My favorite thing is getting reps to understand like a landscape, right? Understanding what goals the companies are facing. What are some of the ways they're trying to achieve those goals? What are some of the pains that they're facing? And really get them to map out
the buyer or the
process.
Company? The buyer or like the whole company?
Well, here's the thing, the company. Because before I can even sell into those individuals, I need to know what the company's doing. And I feel like people skip that. They go right to product. Here's how my product can help you. Here's how my product can sell you more, make you more. 101. But I need to understand what the company is doing. I need to understand where they're moving, where their plan is. And I think once you can have that in place, it's just know your customer. It's really what it comes down to. Know your customer, know what's important to them, know what they're trying to achieve, because now all of a sudden, when we get on these calls, it's going to make it a lot easier for us to position these different types of deals. It's one of the examples we give is if all of a sudden you go into the doctor's office and you go, oh, doc, my shoulder's killing me. It's giving me so much pain. All right, well, we're going to amputate it. What do you think you're going to do? I could go find another doctor. This guy's crazy. That's what's going into a call and pitching product before you know what the actual issue is. So, but I like taking that whole approach, right? Once we can start understanding, because chances are we're not going to get that VP, that C level. We're going to have to talk to that individual contributor, that manager, understand what they're going through, to be able to tie it back to some of, the things that are important to the C levels and how that all plays together.
Dude, I love it. Dude, I really appreciate you being on the show, man.
Yeah.
Dropping bombs over here. So what is there anything, I know we're getting tight on time. Is there anything that I haven't asked you that you're like, I want to share this on Richie's podcast?
I would say the one thing when, we'll teach classes, multiple lines of businesses, different skill levels, and everybody at the end of the day always comes up, my situation's different. My line of business is different. We're unique. At the end of the day, you have to close deals. You have to build pipeline. That's the two things it comes down to. I have customers, need to build pipeline, need to close deals. And if you simplify it, that's what it is. It's, are you unique? Maybe. But at the end of the day, you got to understand the needs of the customer. You got to be able to build pipe. You got to be able to hit your number, and you have to figure out the best ways to do that. It doesn't matter at the end of the day if you sell, if you sell widgets or if you sell SaaS, it's the same concept. And I think people, if they take that step back, all of a sudden these trainings become a lot more valuable.
Literally, in almost every session that we have, they say my industry is different. I get it. Our buyer's different. But like you said, there's still pipeline, there's still activities, there's still
well, it's like I had somebody go, well, mine's very relationship based. I'm like, well, you have to hit your number, right? Like, so what are you going to do if you don't have pipeline halfway through the year? Do you need to get new relationships? Yeah, probably. It's the same idea, same concept. Right. You got to build pipeline, you got to close deals, and how are you going to do that?
Bryan, you're gonna love this. So I went and spoke for a company, and the most tenured sales rep had been at the company for 46 years.
Wow.
Their least tenured was like 18. And it was, and this is totally different. There's no transaction. It's only relationship driven. I'm like, no transaction. It's a sale. What do you mean?
Yeah.
So and then when we went back, you still break that. It's sales. You still have transactions. And you know what? And if you don't make that switch, because there's a lot of industries that are like that, like good old boy type industries. And, you could stay like that, but the buyers of those industries are getting more value driven, less relation driven in certain areas where they want value versus like take me to a strip club type thing. So I like what you're saying, man. It makes a lot of sense. So
yeah.
What's your next play?
I love where I'm at. I love the business that I'm doing. I get to talk. I think the best part about my job is I get to learn about new industries all the time. All the time. I get to hear from people who have been, I'm a big believer in Socratic learning. All right. So when I teach a class, I say Socratic learning. So Socrates. I'm teaching the content doesn't mean that it's right. If you're doing something that's worked, let's have that conversation. So for me, I get better all the time because I'm learning from those 46-year-old, the 46-year-old rep that's been there that long. But I'm also learning from the people that are just coming up, these reps that are in the social media environment, that are posting to these different sites. And then I can blend and merge and have those conversations with the seasoned rep as to why we should be doing this, why it's important, why it's valuable. Once again, if you can explain the why, a lot of this stuff makes a heck of a lot more sense. If you just go say, hey, go post on LinkedIn, that's not going to make any sense. But if you say, hey, look, reps who post on LinkedIn 4 times a week hit their quota 25% more than reps that don't, I'm going to say, I should probably be posting on LinkedIn.
I like that. I like that.
Yep.
Fact-based.
Fact-based. You tell me why, and I'll do it. Don't just tell me to do it. But if you tell me the why, I'm probably going to go do it.
So how can someone find you if they want to, reach out? LinkedIn, Bryan Powers.
LinkedIn, Bryan Powers is probably the best place for me to go.
Bryan with a Y.
Bryan
Powers.
With a Y. Yeah, I'd say connect with me on LinkedIn. That's where I'm on there every day, lurking, trying to find content. And
are you still big into stocks? Remember that?
Yeah.
And
Oh yeah. Still
you love
investing.
that.
Not crypto. Never got into crypto.
You never did?
Never
Dude, when we were
did.
in college, you were always on doing the
Oh
right?
yeah. Oh yeah. I was back in the day it was Scott Trade.
Yeah.
Now I'm a Fidelity guy. But yeah, I still got into
You never got into the
stocks.
Robin Hood thing?
No, I find I'm a C, right? I
Right,
like to
right, right.
if I find something that works, I stick with it. I keep it simple now, man. Long-term investing. I'm married. Might have a kid someday. I'm not going to try to rock the boat. I'm in that long-term play.
Better get going, dude, because like I take your time. Take your time. But the way I look at it is like I don't want to be 55 at my son's baseball game or football game trying to coach.
Oh, I'm on that path. I'm gonna be that
I know
guy.
I'm with you, dude. We're the same age. I don't even have a boy. I have a girl, but not a boy. All right, dude.
Softball girl.
Listen, thank you so much, man. This was great. This was awesome. Thanks so much for
Yeah,
being here. And I'm
absolutely,
sure
man. It was great
in the
seeing you.
future,
Great talking to you.
yeah, and I'm sure in the future we'll have you on again.
Absolutely, anytime.
Cool. I appreciate it, Brian. Have a good day,
Thanks,
man.
brother.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Next Play podcast. If you liked the show, make sure to leave us a review. For more resources, visit relentlessuniversity.com or download the free Relentless University app. And if you're interested in having me speak at your next event, visit relentlessrichie.com. Until next time.